Hello, and welcome to another edition of the American Scouser podcast. I'm Hilary, and with me tonight are Debrai, and for the first time, Ian. Hey, guys.
Hey,
Hi there.
So, full disclosure, Ian is an Arsenal supporter, but he has been an outstanding contributor for the AmericanScouser.com blog in the past. And he's here despite being super sick and busy and all that jazz. So, thank you for being here, Ian, and welcome to the podcast.
I'd just like to say I am pretty pro Liverpool, so just to give
Yeah.
y'all,
That's always great to hear. And I feel like we're gonna dive into talking about the game from the weekend, but we don't have to spend that much time on it if you all don't want to, because I know none of us wanted to watch that game or ever think about it ever again. So we do have to discuss it. Let's dive in. It seems like a lot of the Liverpool fan base is having a really negative reaction to this game. But if we're being honest, we are top of the table, and without looking ahead or looking over our shoulder at City, is it safe to say that going to Old Trafford and coming away with a draw is still a good thing? Ian, I'm going to throw the first question to you, since you did choose to watch the game instead of the Arsenal game. Why? Why did this game kind of feel like a loss?
um, well, I just think with the last few performances from Liverpool, bar the Bayern match, that it felt kind of lackluster or like a rather tired and uninspired performance. So I think when you don't see your team kind of performing up to what you're expecting in a derby match like this, you can be easily discouraged. So I think ultimately, watching the team, and then of course the Firmino injury is, kind of terrible icing on an awful cake from the weekend. So you're just kind of faced with the result you have, and kind of just crossing your fingers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Debrai, what did you make of Liverpool reacted to the what was happening to the United side in a game that they were plagued with having to make all three substitutions in like the first 50 minutes?
I think, to be honest, first of all, to answer your first question, I think the result is fine. We're top of the table, as you pointed out, still. But I think the reaction of the supporters is a reflection of what you see from the players. And I think what you see is some level of, I don't want to say mental fragility, but there's a sense of the pressure is getting to the players a little bit. They're 11 games away from doing something Liverpool's never done in the Premier League era. There's a sense of expectancy that's on their shoulders. And I think you're seeing that on the field. And to answer your specific question, you would think when United have had to use up three substitutions and they've lost some of their key players, particularly Andres Herrera in the first half, you would think that they would be chomping at the bit, salivating to put their feet to Man United's neck. But in a weird sort of way, it almost felt like they got tighter. They got more nervous, as if they thought to themselves, "Oh, gee, this is a great chance to not just get a point, but 3 points at Old Trafford." And maybe they were thinking too much about the importance of the game rather than just playing it. And I just feel that not just last Sunday, but there are elements of that as well in the Bayern Munich match. And, maybe we saw hints of it against the Leicester match, as well as the game against West Ham. The players are just, I think, under a lot of pressure. And I feel that if they can learn how to cope with that pressure and just manage it, I think we'll be fine. And I think that's what I kind of walk away with is I'm still not sure we're going to be able to overcome this period. And, all teams, if they're going to win the title, they have to come through periods like this. Man City had their period in December. They had it in their match against Newcastle. We're just going to have to find a way through to how to manage this pressure and allow our quality to uh, demonstrate itself.
Yeah, definitely. So with that being said, we don't have to focus too much more on that game unless there's anything else y'all want to point out. We can move forward to the Watford game tomorrow.
Good.
Okay.
I never want to see that game again.
I'm sorry?
I said I don't want to see that. Like you, I don't want to see a Sunday game again.
No one can.
Painful watch.
Yeah. So we have Watford at Anfield tomorrow. Watford are 7th. I think they're on 40 points.
That's
Oh, Ian, here's a fun fact for you.
Go ahead.
Liverpool Liverpool have only scored more Premier League goals against Arsenal at Anfield under Jurgen Klopp than they have against Watford.
Well, I mean, hey, it's been a rough few years.
There were some really thrilling games, that's for sure.
Yes, definitely.
So, going into this game, we do have an updated injury list, as you alluded to, Debrai, with Bobby Firmino being out. He could make the bench for tomorrow's game, and Klopp did say that he would be likely for the Merseyside derby this weekend. We also have Joe Gomez out, Dejan Lovren, and Ox, but all of them are on the up. So hopefully we'll be able to see something from hopefully a few of them come March, before March is over at least. So with that update on the injuries, and keeping in mind that Henderson went off the field during that last match in a bit of a tiff, and Bobby, is out. Who do you see in the starting 11 tomorrow? Let's go with you, Debrai, first.
okay. Well, I would start with Allison in the back, Trent and Andy Robertson on the left and right back positions, respectively. We would go with Van Dijk and Matip as the center halves. And I would, for the first time since I've done these podcasts, which is only 2 other times, I would start with Keita in the midfield alongside Fabinho and Wijnaldum. I think Henderson and Milner could use a rest. And I would go with Mane, Salah in the center, and Shaqiri on the right hand side as our front three. That's the way I would manage the almost certain absence of Robert Firmino. And to be honest with you, I would just as well not have him play any part in this game. He's too important. So if he's not really 100%, we've got a big game on the weekend.
That's true. That's true. Ian, do you have any alterations to that? Any differences for your lineup for Liverpool?
Well, I mean, I think when it comes to Klopp, you're not going to see, at least at this point right now, I don't think we're going to see too many rotations unless, injuries and things like that are kind of playing into his options, I guess. But, personally for me, I would like the midfield. I think at the back, for the most part, they're fine. Milner could come out. I don't know why Alexander-Arnold exactly was on the bench for the last one. I guess he's still recovering or something along those lines.
He played the last game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having him come back in for Milner, I think will give some more stability at the back. And I also think it's going to help the team, contribute going forward. I would definitely have. I'm a big Lallana fan personally. Maybe it's the English in me, but I'd like to see him come in and be creative. I see uh, Fabinho probably staying in and Wijnaldum probably staying on as well. Possibly, Keita coming in for Wijnaldum if, he appears to be kind of tired or anything along those lines with games, coming somewhat close in the week and fixtures coming up at the weekend as well. But, I don't expect Mane or Salah to come off. And then up top, I think it's really going to be kind of a toss-up. Maybe Sturridge. Also, we saw Origi come on for Salah. So, we're kind of in a position where I think that Klopp isn't 100% sure who he's going to put up top. But, personally, I'd like to see just some kind of different approach or movement out of those front three. Get back to maybe a little bit more of what we saw last year with kind of this interchanging flow rather than a more stable position-based attack. So I guess that's my 2 cents for it.
Okay. I kind of agree on some level. I feel like the lineup might surprise us tomorrow as far as who might be up top to replace that open spot from Firmino, and things will obviously shift around. I think that Naby Keita needs to be in this game. I think that we need to see something from him. He has been game by game that he's appeared in, really been improving. And I feel like he really needs to be on the pitch at some point tomorrow if he doesn't start. And I could really see this being a game where he really comes through and shines, and maybe we finally get that that goal from him. That's what I really want. So I would like him to start. So I think I would agree with the lineup that you put forward, Debrai. It's the one that makes the most sense, but Klopp has surprised us, like in the December string of games with some of the lineups and the things that he put forward for that um, front attacking force. What do you think that this is a must-win game after the week that we've just had? And do you see us winning it by a small margin, or do you think it'll, in typical Watford fashion, be high in goals? Let's go with you, Debray.
So the question is, how are we going to win it?
Yeah, it is must win, right?
You're right. I like the framing of your question. I think it is a must win. If we can't beat Watford, with all due respect to Watford, at home, with the difference in quality between our respective sides, we don't deserve to be champions. I know that sounds dramatic, but I mean these are the games you have to win. This is the business end of the season, and we have to win this match, particularly given some of the points we dropped, particularly the home game against Leicester. So I do think, this is a must-win game, and I think that we have to put a lineup out there that looks like we're not trying to scrape a victory, but that we're going to go for it. I think there's a little bit of, we may have overcorrected a little bit. Last year we were just fun to watch, but at any moment we could, like self-combust. I think this year, for the most part, we have erred on the side of caution. But I think against these sides that are now really trying to sit back against us, I think we have to regain some of that swagger and say, look, you know what? We're just going to try to win this game. We're not going to worry about the next game. We're going to try to score as many goals as we can, and just have a more of an aggressive mindset. And I think if we do that, our quality will will show, and I think we can, to answer your question, have a decisive result. And if we don't, then it's going to be another nail biter. And I think, as we've seen with some of these quote unquote smaller teams, that if we let them hang around, we let them get a foothold in the game, we give them a sense that, gee, you know what, it's 0-0, we're just up 1-0, and we seem to be tightening up. We encourage the opposition when we do that. And so hopefully it's not that type of a game, because if it becomes that type of a game, then I think the result's not going to be in our favor.
Yeah. Ian, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it definitely is one of those matches that is carrying a lot of importance. Everyone always talks about champions having to beat the teams that are below them in the table, outside of the top six, really. Watford is kind of a funny one. They don't really seem to be super consistent this year. I mean, their last few matches, if you look at the results, aren't exactly fear-inspiring in any sense, except for, of course, their last one, which was Cardiff City. So I think Liverpool is, uh, kind of head over Cardiff, in terms of just like fielding a team that can play. So, I really think that Liverpool might have a tough one in this match, though. I think Watford's going to be coming in riding a high after that big 5-1 win. But I think if you see the right personnel on the pitch for Liverpool, I don't think they're going to have too many of a problems. But at the same time, it could go either way. I really think, depending on the mindset that Liverpool comes into the match with, I think is really going to dictate the result. Maybe I would say 2-1 Liverpool, and on a good day, I'd say 3-0 Liverpool.
Yeah, I like to hear goals. We all know I have a thing for goal differential. I like the 3-0. What about you? You didn't have a score prediction?
Well, yeah, I was all over the map, right? I think if you're gonna make me pick a score, I can't think of a better game for Mo Salah to come out of for him, a little bit of a funk. We've seen him substituted a couple times recently, which is almost unheard of. I think that he's going to get off the mark. I think his quality will show through, and I think we're going to win 4-1.
Oh, I like that one too. That's a good one. Although no clean sheet. But they are seventh. And they have let's see, they did you mentioned the previous fixture was 5-1. Then they beat Everton 1-0, and then they lost to Tottenham 2-1. And then they had a scoreless draw against Burnley, and then a win over Crystal Palace 2-1. That was their last 5 games. So my prediction is I would like to say 4-0. That's just my hope. I actually think it'll probably be my real prediction is 2-0. Because I do think we can keep a clean sheet with Virgil van Dijk back. And he was back in the last game, but I think that at home at Anfield we'll find some kind of rhythm at some point in the game. With that being said, March is going to be a big month for the squad. We have 5 fixtures. Next Sunday, obviously, is the big one, the Merseyside Derby. Bobby will probably be back for that one. And then we have Burnley at home on the 10th, then Bayern Munich away on the 13th, and then Fulham away on the 17th. And then the international break, which hopefully none of our guys have to go. Too many of them have to go out for. I know Salah, Sadio Mane, and I think Naby Keita. I think all of their countries already qualified for the African Cup of Nations. So hopefully I know Salah, the Egypt FA came out and said they weren't calling him back.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. But we do have a game on the 31st against Tottenham, and I think that will be the culminating game for us in March. What do y'all see coming the squad us coming out of March going into April, and City have a lot of games too, and of course they've had an injury blow. I think Ferdinand is out for most of March.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Liverpool have to do in the next couple of games leading into the Bayern Munich and the game, then eventually the game with Tottenham, to keep the momentum going?
You want to start with me?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I kind of got lost in the question.
Yeah. I think what is a cliche, I think has merit, which is we just have to take it one opponent at a time, and we have to accept that there's pressure in the situation, but remember what got us to where we are, which is we're a very strong team that flips the puck quickly with a lot of interchanges among players. We like to unbalance defenses. We like to be unpredictable, and we're willing to take risks. I've seen some of that personality not lost necessarily, but diluted over the last month and a half. We're thinking too much. We're taking too long to make passes. We're looking for that perfect pass, that perfect shot. We've got an Ian support. I'm sorry, we have an Arsenal supporter with us today. And don't take this the wrong way, but it looks like we're trying to score Arsenal goals. We should just be trying to be Liverpool. And I think if we can do that, there's no reason, with the possible exception of the Bayern Munich game, that we shouldn't win all these games. If we want to be champions, we have to win all these games, or else I think we're going to have to rely on Man City to drop points. I don't think that's the way we want to win the title. I don't know. I don't think that's the way we will win the title because we've got a couple of tricky games in April as well. So I think if we can just be who we are, take one game at a time, stop thinking so damn much, and let our quality show, I think we can win all these games. I'll be honest with you, Hilary. I'm least concerned about the Bayern Munich game, and I think that tells us all about what our priority is this year.
Right. I really agree with what you said, that it does feel a little bit like we've lost a little bit of the identity in the last month or so, and I think it might only take one game for us one good game, hopefully tomorrow against Watford, for us to come back in swinging. To kind of shift the conversation a little bit, because that question was all over the place and you did really good answering it. Ian, I'm gonna shift a question to you, kind of broadly about City. Do you think that with Fernandinho and Laporte out until at least mid-March, and then Jesus and John Stones are out for the next match, I think, which is against West Ham tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow.
Yes, that's right.
Do you think that they'll have some momentum coming off of their win, the cup win on Sunday? Or do you think that they're going to fall back into something like what happened in December without those players?
Wow. I have to get my crystal ball out for that one. It's tough to say. I, for one, and I know as much as you all were, was rooting for that extra time to happen just to kind of wear down City, who have looked really good of late. They've been passing all over opponents as usual. And, they haven't really looked super frail at all, minus that Schalke match, which was a little bit wild. But
Man, Schalke, way to fall apart in the last minutes.
Right?
You had it, Schalke. Oh, okay. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tough one. I thought for sure that Schalke was going to get a result out of that match with those two fortuitous PKs. Not saying that they were bad calls or anything like that. It's just not every game you're going to get two. But it's unfortunate for them to have lost that match on Schalke's end. But yeah, I mean, I think Man City trying to pull up their lineup just to see who they really have on the bench to kind of fill those roles. Company and Otamendi, I would say, are probably their weakest links in defense. That's kind of a bold statement saying something so negative about Vincent Company because he's just such a powerhouse at the back, but he is very injury prone and just not quite as up to speed as he has been in the past. And then Otamendi is one of these players that is like a red card waiting to happen, in my opinion.
He was a red card waiting to happen for Schalke.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they definitely have some vulnerability at the back right now. I think that's going to be a real problem. And then when you lose your, kind of center defensive midfield player who covers that, duo in the middle of your defense, it's going to be really tough to overcome that for them. I will say their next few fixtures and things like that look fairly similar in terms of competitiveness from their opposition. They also have a match against Watford, and then they also play their Champions League fixture. But they also have, FA Cup and things like that. So like we've kind of been mentioning, having to play in a cup final, play extra time, pick up some injuries to key players. I really think that there's definitely room for them to stumble going into this next month.
Yeah, well, hopefully their March and our March will be like December was for us and for them, respectively. But kind of moving away from that to look at another club again, I've been wanting to talk about Chelsea since last week when the transfer ban was handed out. If it's not overturned and it comes to my attention, thank you, Ian, that these transfer bans usually get lessened by half, so they might only see a ban in the summer if that appeal actually happened. How do you think that, and this is a broad question, that the transfer ban, how do you think that they'll fare next season without being able to bring in people this summer? And the second part of that question is, because I know on previous podcasts we've all been in agreement with some of our other contributors that Eden Hazard will probably not stay there. He'll leave in the summer. So do you see this cementing that he is definitely going to leave now that this is happening, or is Chelsea just going to be so desperate to keep a hold of him that he does end up staying? So it's a kind of a two-part question about him and just how are they going to go into the next season with the players that they have. And keep in mind they have 41 people on loan, out on loan. Debrai, I'll go to you first.
Sure. Well, first of all, can I take a few liberties with your question?
Yeah.
The first is, I have to they're one of the teams I just really dislike. They're, in my opinion, not a very classy team. They're owned by a guy who, let's face it, has funded the team with, almost criminally obtained money, at least from a Western perspective. They been spending money like nobody's business for most of the last 14, 15 years. They have odious elements in their supporter base, which I won't spend too much time talking about. You can just Google it. So to me, for them to get a transfer ban because of misconduct um, with player transfers, particularly with youth players, to me that's just par for the course for this club. So I'm not surprised nor impressed. Um, Taking a few other liberties with your question, I do wonder if they knew this because I thought it was strange. They purchased Christian Pulisic in January and loaned him back to Dortmund. Um, I thought that was I thought that was a kind of an unusual move. There's no reason that move couldn't have waited until the summer. They seem to me, in my mind, to have almost paid a premium for him. So it just makes me wonder if they knew that this was coming, and that's one of the reasons that they bought him. So they did get a little bit ahead of the transfer ban. As it relates to your question in terms of Hazard, one thing I don't know is I don't know how long his contract is. But if his contract is pretty lengthy, he's what is he, 26, 27? You know, they might be less willing to sell him if they don't feel like they can replace him. But at the same time, if he throws a fit, we all know about player power. So that's going to be a funny one. And I'm assuming that a transfer ban means you can't buy players. It doesn't preclude you from selling players. I don't know that for a fact, but that seems to make sense. So yeah, bottom line is, I'm not surprised that a team that I think has very loose ethics is bankrolled by somebody who's not the most saintly person around. Um, that they would find themselves in this bind is a shock to no one. Other than that, they're a great club.
Well, I mean, it was something that put a smile on my face last week, except when I think about Christian Pulisic. To hear that they were getting this transfer ban, and then of course the events from the weekend happens, from the cup game with Sarri and Kepa. Ian, have you ever really seen anything like that before? I mean, we've heard about players who kind of were disgruntled to be taken off, or who maybe some of them have refused to come off, but it's never really blown up to this degree before, where people are changing Wikipedia bios to say that Kepa is the manager of Chelsea FC. Have you ever seen
So,
anything quite like this before?
Uh, not really. I don't think anybody can say that, they have. The craziest thing that they might say that they've witnessed was something Eric Cantona did, but that wasn't his manager. So this situation is pretty ludicrous. I mean, I was sitting on the couch watching that match just in utter disbelief at what was going on. It kind of defies words to
Uh,
some extent.
do you believe this story, like in hindsight now, where they're saying it was just a misunderstanding?
Well, I'd like to kind of put a final nail into sorry here, but I might give him a little bit the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I'm not sure that the communication in terms of their shared language, or better yet, unshared language in this situation really would have benefited the situation at all. Um, so I do give him a little bit of credit and think that maybe there legitimately might be some miscommunication. But at the same time, in an era where, so many PR kind of scripted answers are given, I could easily see it as being very last second thrown together kind of he said, she said kind of situation, where they're just trying to throw it under and get past it, but at the same time, I think a little bit, we've seen a lot of players react negatively recently to being pulled off, as an Arsenal fan. We've seen it with Alexis in the past, and then we've also seen it with Ozil and a little bit with Lacazette. Players do get frustrated, and I think the player dynamic in the last few years has changed. I think, it really is like a new generation of player. We see all these players on social media all the time and becoming like these puffed up public personas. So I really think that kind of also plays into it. So what I'm getting at here is I think there's potential to see things like this happening maybe a little bit more often with managers and players, but that will definitely remain to be seen, and I'm sure every manager will be wary of that problem after seeing what happened this weekend.
Hilary, may
Yeah.
I weigh in on that, because that's just too delicious of a topic not to weigh in on, right?
Yeah, I was going to bring up, we have been seeing an influx of it in smaller doses to a lesser degree, but like at Leicester, you definitely were hearing a lot of stuff about the player power and getting managers
Yep.
sacked and things like that. But go ahead with the point that you wanted to make.
Yeah. Okay. Number one, I rewatched that video of when he was being treated by the trainers, and then how it developed afterwards. He got up. His coach was basically going batshit crazy because it wasn't coming out. Um, David Luiz, he went and talked to him and was telling him, "Dude, you got to come out." Um, I mean, unless their keeper is incredibly dumb, which I guess is a possibility, I cannot imagine that there was any confusion. His manager was telling him, come out, and he was saying, no, I'm not coming out. And so this is not one of those situations where a player gets subbed and throws sort of a fit. We see that all the time, and I always think that's kind of petulant. Although I understand it's such an emotional game. I get that. This was a completely different scenario. This is a guy saying, I will not do what my boss is telling me to do. And instead of doing it in the privacy of an office, he's doing it in front of effectively TV. He's doing it in front of tens and tens of millions of people. I think it's a humiliation for the manager, and I think that they have a problem. But if you look at it, I think a little more deeply, look at the way Chelsea treats their managers. I mean, managers don't last long at Chelsea, whether they win or lose. You saw what happened with Conte. I mean, he won the title one year, was sacked the next. It happened with Mourinho. It's happened with several other Chelsea managers. So over the years, the players have been sent the message that, you know what, we don't back our manager, and the players know that. And they know that if they disrespect the manager, ultimately the manager is going to pay the price. So no pun intended, but I'd say it's a sorry state of affairs at Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, definitely. I think that team has a real authority problem. They don't have a respect for the authority of the manager, and I think that that's a prime example of a situation where it was all about the players' feelings and not about what was best for the team and the respect that they have for the manager. Because I think that you could argue that the other keeper, I've read and I've heard lots of people talking about it. He had a bit of an edge on Kepa as far as being in goal for PK's, with against City. They probably all studied the same things and everything, but as far as his history, he had a little bit of an edge there. And I really think that, we're not gonna see Sorry survive. If he makes it past April, um, but I don't think he'll be there next season. Would you agree, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine him staying, not only for the club and their performances and the situation going on with the players, but also just for Sorry as a human being. I mean, I can't imagine what things are like at that club. You know, there's always rumors going on in the back, as you've kind of alluded to. They have an authority problem. Um, so I just can't imagine him staying there, but let me kind of pitch this at you. With a transfer ban coming up, you know, do you hang on to a manager that you know is going to get you a certain type of product, or are you going to wade back out there again, you know, unless they kind of have somebody lined up to come in at Chelsea, knowing full well the situation that they're probably walking into, at least, you know, again, as we've mentioned here, um, you know, having a one window transfer ban, you know, it's a tough situation to come into as a manager at a club that already has an authority problem. So you're not exactly set up for success when, you know, your higher ups are just ready to kind of pull out the noose whenever they feel like. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sorry at least makes it to the end of the year, um, just because of the situation Chelsea's in. But I think we're going to see a real interesting situation unfold in the summer. Potentially, you might see Sorry at least start the next season, kind of in a strategic manner, and then kind of boot him as soon as you know whether or not you get that January transfer window and you can get a new manager in. The only problem with buying players in January or planning in that style is players cost a lot of money in January. So I think Chelsea's really going to have to sit down, look at all their options. So it wouldn't surprise me if Sorry makes it to the end of the season, but then after that, I think we're really in for quite a circus in the summer when it comes to their back room and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What about you, Debrai? Do you see him making it to the end of the season?
You know, I think once and I think Ian raised some really good points there. I think once it becomes clear that Chelsea is no longer contending for Champions League place, I think once that becomes clear, I don't see him surviving. Um, just because I think, even though there might be some logical reasons for him to stick around, it just doesn't seem like it's a club that makes logical decisions. And if Roman Abramovich gets mad and upset, then people act. Um, this isn't a club that it's not publicly traded. They don't have a board of directors that has real control of the club. It's one man control, and I think that that's what will happen. So I think that'll be the inflection point. If they slide and it looks like Champions League spots unattainable, I think he's going to be gone. I will say this: has he been undermined by the Chelsea players? Yes. Has he been undermined by the management team? Yes. But if he has done any sort of due diligence about Chelsea Football Club before signing on, then he would know that what he's experiencing is just consistent with Chelsea's pattern over the years. So, I don't feel that sorry for him, to be honest with you. And I'm sure if he leaves, he's going to get a massive amount of money. So, I'm not in the sorry, sympathy camp, to be honest with you. And I'll also say this: I don't think he's that great of a manager, at least from what I've seen this year. I know he's supposed to be a legend at Napoli. Anybody who would move N'Golo Kante from the defensive midfielder position, where for many people he's not just a World Cup winner, but one of the best players in the world in that position, if not the best. He won Premier League Player of the Year, I think, a couple years ago, playing that position. And to say, okay, I'm going to move him, higher up the pitch, and now I want him to be like this creative midfielder because I have this idea of the way I want to play, and I don't think he has the attributes. That sounds to me like a stubborn man. I mean, sometimes you have to adjust your tactics to the players that you have and make sure you're putting all your players in a position to succeed. I think he hasn't done that at Chelsea, and I think that's probably frustrated the players. I know it's frustrated the fans. So there's a lot of blame to go around here, and it's just it's I don't want to say it's sad to see. Frankly, I kind of enjoy watching them implode. If I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. I don't feel too sorry for him because he did find success for the first couple of months that when he came in as manager, but his tactics have pretty much produced, the results that they've gotten. He's been unable to shift things, and I'm not really sure if I've watched a Chelsea game this season that has had Jorginho and Conte on the field at the same time. I can't think of one off the top of my head, and to me, I would try to find a way to get both of them to work in tandem together to their strengths, and I don't think that he has done that. But
Agreed.
yeah. Well, I really enjoyed listening to y'all talk about Chelsea imploding and hopefully falling into
Long may continue.
the abyss that is like farther down the
They
table.
third that, by the way.
Yeah. But talking about managers leaving and managers arriving, today we did have a new manager come into the Premier League. Brendan Rodgers returns from his stint in Scotland and now has taken over at Leicester City. Without spending too much time talking about this, do you think that that's a good fit for them? And do you see him being able to push them and keep them into the top of the table, which is, I think, what they have their eye on is, eventually, if not, probably not this season, but being a contender in those European spots. Let's go with you, Ian.
I really, as everybody else, look, Brendan Rodgers was great at Swansea. He had, of course, a few great years at Liverpool, or one great year and some other ones. And, I think he's still a decent manager somewhere in there. I mean, he's obviously had great success at Celtic. I mean, I want to say they had an invincible season, if I'm not mistaken, where they didn't lose, and he's won, cup doubles there, I believe.
They were 69 games unbeaten.
Yeah, so I guess he knows somewhat of what he's doing, but can he replicate that on one of the biggest stages in league football is a whole other story, second place with a high quality Liverpool team is one thing, but a Leicester that has had to rework their roster in the last few years and things like that since winning the title, losing people like Mahrez, and it's tough. And then of course Vardy is getting older, but I'm sure the spite that he has for Puel will definitely benefit him going forward. He seems to be one of those players who's motivated by that. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I really don't see them doing much better than like upper mid table, maybe a 7th or 8th in a good year. I mean, they just don't have the money or the talent to compete at the peak level.
Debrai, what are your thoughts on Leicester in the top half of the table, possibly?
Well, I mean, they sit in 11th place now on 35 points, a point away from the top half. So can it happen? Yeah, it can certainly happen. They're 5 points from seventh place, and after we beat Watford tomorrow, um, that's going to help them even further. So yeah, I think that they can do it, and I think what we have seen and is um, last year, but I think this year even more so, is we have two leagues in one. I mean, the top six this year are way better than the other teams. There's a 10-point gap between six. And you see the goals for, the goals against. They're just, the talent gap is huge. And that's a reflection of spending power. And it's also a reflection of history. I mean, players want to play for the teams that they think have the tradition and the resources to win. So I kind of feel like Leicester won the title, and let's face it, that was a great football story in 2015. It was lightning in a bottle, and I think that at some level that colored the way they see themselves moving forward. Because for me, Leicester has actually been a little unlucky this year. I've seen them play well many times and just give up like a last-second goal or have one little thing go wrong. They're actually a decent team, and I think with Brendan Rodgers, who's, I won't repeat everything Ian said. I think he summarized it well. He's definitely a Premier League level manager. He's been pretty much successful everywhere he's managed. So I think he's a good fit for them. They want to play more offensive soccer. That was the knock against their old coach. I think he want to play that style of soccer, but I don't think their position is really going to change that much.
Mhm.
Given the fact that moving from 11th to 7th is just a couple of points, it doesn't mean you've made a sea change, a difference if you make a movement in that area. But I don't think they're going to move from that to being a title contender again.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree with like everything that you guys said. I think that the winning the league definitely changed the way that they saw themselves, and they've set their sights pretty high. And I don't really think that they'll be able to do much this season. Next season, I think maybe they'll bring in some people. They do have some youth talent, and who knows? Maybe Brendan Rodgers will be able to do something with that. But I do like to see them. I do have my one of my England shirts is "No Vardy, No Party," so I do enjoy watching them play, especially Jamie Vardy. So with the table talk in mind, I thought we would end the podcast with our top four predictions. With where we are in the season now, how things have kind of turned out, what we kind of know. Um, if y'all would give who you think will be in the top four at the end of the season. I already did it in October. I did it in one of our fall podcasts. And the top four that I said is currently the top four right now. And I was the only person that included Arsenal at number four. So I'm pretty good. And I'm going to stick with it as is right now. But I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts. Debrai, how about you?
I will give you that. Just one footnote. I looked it up. Watford have not collected a Premier League point at Anfield since 1999. So just something to keep in mind for tomorrow. Hopefully, history will not change. To your question, I think the top four will be Liverpool, Man City, Tottenham, Man United.
Oh, okay. Okay. Ian, what about you?
Um, it's hard to make a prediction with such a. I really think that March is going to make or break the title chase, to be honest, and really the chase for the top four. Um, I would say, I really would like to see Liverpool win. I'm tired of Manchester City, so um, definitely put Liverpool up there for one, at least for sentimentality. And then two, it has to be Man City. I just don't see Tottenham competing, especially after having quite a Spurs moment recently.
Oh, I
So,
forgot about the Pochettino thing. Oh well.
yeah, the whole we could talk forever about Pochettino and Mike Dean in their own rights, but that's a whole other podcast. So yeah, I would say third. I mean, Tottenham just has a little bit of an extra lead there, so I think I have to leave the top three as is, um, and then probably fourth, I would probably say Man U, and I mean, hey, I'm saying that as an Arsenal fan. Um,
You think they can keep the fourth place?
No, I really don't. They just haven't been consistent enough. They haven't really put together the product that makes you feel like they're going to be able to hang on there. There's some tough fixtures coming up as well. I mean, Arsenal play Man U March 10th, and not to mention this weekend is the North London Derby. So, Arsenal have a pretty tough March coming up. They also have Europa League, um, and it's really going to dictate whether Arsenal kind of put everything towards winning the Europa to try to get back in the Champions League, or whether they are going to, stick it out and hang on to fourth. But as of right now, I don't think that they can do it. But that being said, I always leave room for Manchester United, especially with Man U's injury problems, as we saw against Liverpool, could really hinder them. So I would say it's probably going to be Man U in fourth because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has his team firing right now. Arsenal probably fifth, and then Chelsea probably bringing up the rear because I just don't think that they can recover.
All right. Well, I've got all of these predictions down, and I will be handing out the trophy to the winner as we have our metaphorical trophies. But I guess that brings the podcast to an end. I think that we talked about all the points I wanted to talk about, and I feel like Debrai, you made a really good point that we are going to win against Watford tomorrow, and it's going to be great. So we'll be having a preparatory podcast discussion to review that game and then hopefully get into more detail about the derby this weekend. So thanks for the podcast,
Sounds great. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.